Hi, I'm Robin and welcome back to Rotten Lead, where I'm continuing my Traveller world building process and digging into the next system in the subsector that I'm generating using these 2008 edition of the Traveller rules published by Mongoose. But I've also been using the earlier versions of these as well, so I haven't been just strictly following just the Mongoose rules, although that's the majority of how I've been doing the world building. And I'm just going to get straight in. I've done about 3 or 4 videos on this already, so have a look back if you want to see. The early ones I go into a little bit more detail, but I'm just going to get struck straight in this time rather than going through my process in maximum detail, which you can catch in an earlier video. So I do that by jumping to my Raspberry Pi desktop computer. I don't know if you've not seen a Raspberry Pi before. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but I do like to sort of show what a Raspberry Pi looks like. This is the computer I'm running here to fill in the sheet and also just show the view there of the star system as I work through that subsector. So the Raspberry Pi is like a small single board computer. That's what SBC stands for there, single board computer. I've got a 4 gig version in here, and I can show you what it looks like as well, actually. If I just get my book out of my hands here. Yeah, so that little single board that you can see there is tucked away in one of these metal cases, and it just has power, HDMI out, which I'm feeding into this so that I can view it, and it boots from an SD card that sits in there. This is a sort of a nice metal case that it comes with. Oh, and the ports on the back, which you can see if you look at the image I've got here too. You can see it has network cabling, 2 USB 3, 2 USB 2, which I'm not using because I'm just using a mouse that's Bluetooth, because it's got Bluetooth running in there as well. Go back to that Raspberry Pi desktop, and you can see here in the top left hand corner, if you spy where I'm wiggling my mouse here, that's the Raspberry Pi logo, and it runs a version of Linux on here. So yeah, sorry to dive way onto my love for the Raspberry Pi computers, but just felt I had to do that. So if I get my face out of the way, we can zoom into what we've got so far of this subsector. So I've got the classic Traveller subsector, which is sort of 10 systems down and 8 systems across the top here, really just so that it could fit on a letter page or an A4 page. And the subsector that I've been working on initially was Talon here, and the last session I did last week was Toxon. So you can see those two being built. Talon was an ice ball and very small, quite industrial. Toxon was just a desert, and we ended up with kind of a banking traders corporation type operation on there, and a lower level of population to Talon on the desert. So I've been running a game in the meantime as well with my players, just zooming into the area so we can see it a bit closer. So yeah, we've got Toxon here, and I've got Ozark next, but the game I'm running in between, which I do every 2 weeks with my players, they've built a trade up basically. So they're taking some freight, and well, they're planning to. They haven't quite got out of the system yet, but they're planning to take some freight from Talon to Toxon. They've also bought an armored vehicle, because they got a vehicle in the trade rolls that they were making to find a proper purchase and speculative trade. So they've bought a vehicle. They managed to get it something like 10% off the asking price, and they're hoping when they take it to Toxon that they'll get a better buying price there as well to make some money on that. So yeah, it's still got the old name in the top there, but this is 0206. So I'll just start typing it in, 0206, and the name is Ozark. I haven't got a name for the planet in there yet, because that's what we're now rolling up, is the major stellar object where people reside in this area. It's not necessarily a planet, it could be a large asteroid, could be such a tiny, insignificant, inhospitable world that they end up building some sort of space station or orbital near it that could be the actual place of residence of the population. However, this time I'm hoping, because I did an ice ball and a desert of Toxon, and Talon was an ice ball, I thought hopefully Ozark, the next one I roll out, will end up being something more than some sort of inhospitable over hot location. And I can see already, because I know there's a system here, there's a gas giant. So yes, and the digit for the starport is actually an A. So it's a very elite, high-end, best starport you can get, which I think is just an 11 plus or 10 plus. So it can do all sorts of repairs. So shipyard, it has an imperial consulate, and it has a naval presence as well. That means they are bases that are attached to the starbase. They're not necessarily inside the starbase, or they could be, if it was a really small starbase, which then it's very unlikely you're going to have imperial consulate in there, but they may end up only having an office or a small, medium-sized location on the side of the starport. But in a larger, successful, high-grade starport like this, a grade A here in Ozark, they're likely to be bigger bases within the base, or a separate base right next to the starbase, the starport as well. And just one thing that's worth mentioning about starports in general is that they're usually separate from the planet or object where the main population is for your system. So in Toxon, for example, it was a Class B, which is a really good grade of starport. But the Toxon policy against foreign visitors was just not to allow any in at all, which means the starport, whether it's orbital or planet side, will be populated by foreigners and travelers and imperial people, ranked officers, etc., and the naval presence too, but they won't necessarily be mixing, apart from on a diplomatic sort of level with the and on a trade level with the people of Toxon itself, because they rolled up a very negative role on their views on law, and it just means they just don't want any foreign people or the like on the planet, which tied into the background nicely as I was doing that. But I just wanted to mention that as I go into starting to roll this, because it's worth knowing, if you're not familiar with Traveller, that these locations are sort of these isolated starports that sit within the system and are more imperial, or they have these other faction aspects to them, which don't mean they're necessarily connected or in any way aligned with the locals. Although there's no doubt you could end up with whatever you like. It could be an imperial consulate that is mostly populated with people from that system. Probably actually many of them are, because they'd hire locally, wouldn't they? It's the easiest way to do it, and then bring them into the imperial ways, but at least within that starport anyway. And you can imagine the espionage, spies, and backwards and forwards between the locals, especially if they're like Toxon and they don't like that external presence. So if I just get my dice together, what I tend to do is just switch down here, and you can just see me using my dice tray or tower. So I've got a 7, so that's not too bad. It's 7 minus 2, so it's a 5. When I say not too bad, it's still relatively small. So yeah, that's a 5, 8,000 kilometers. And there's some examples in here as well that I think it's like an 8 is the Earth size, yeah. 12,000. So we're on the way to being Earth size, but not quite. And the atmosphere is 2d6 minus 7, but then plus 5 for the fact that it's a size 5. You just add the digit. Oh, interesting. So a 3, but a 3 minus 7, I think that just bottoms out. Oh, I don't know, maybe you meant to go to minus 4, and then it's only plus 1. Let's have a look. If it's got 1 as a digit, then we are only 1. We do. Wow, this is an interesting place. Well, actually, that is interesting, because both Toxon and Talon, their main system planets, primary system planets is probably the best way to call them, had atmospheres of sort that you could survive in, and one of them was tainted, the other one wasn't, but still too cold to survive in externally. But this one looks like it's going to be really doesn't have an atmosphere at all. So I'm a tiny bit disappointed with that, because I would have liked to have something verging on somewhere where people can stroll about. But let's get the next one up here for the... So 7. So the temperature digit, there's no modifier for that. So 7 at least feels like it's not going to be burning up outside. So it's temperate despite the lack of atmosphere. And then the hydro digit is a 2d6, but it's a -4 because of that atmosphere. So just 5, 9 in total -4. So I think this means it does have, if it's a 5, let's see what comes up. I think it means it does have water, large oceans. So actually it's just interesting state. And now I am interested because, like I said, so far I've had, like an ice ball and then a desert planet. So at least this has something interesting going for it. It's got lots of big Earth-like oceans. And it's temperate. So the only thing is you can't breathe it. So population digit is 2d6 -2, which is standard. Okay, so 5. So it doesn't have a massive population either. Hundreds of thousands average. Yeah, I'm liking the sound that maybe some sort of ocean location or base. It's got a grade A starport, so it must be, probably, given that Talon is an ice ball and Toxon isn't any better being a desert, maybe that's why as a system it's liked for the fact it's got so much water. Who knows? Government digit. Now population, because it's a reasonable population, of +5. So it's 2d6 -7 for the government, +5. So 1 + 5 is 6. So that was, 8. -7, 1. +5, 6. So I think I can just type 6. I did do this spreadsheet. I should know that I could just type 6. So interesting. Captive government ruling factions are performed by an imposed leadership answerable to an outside group. So basically someone's moved in here and put put the people under the cosh somehow. So that is interesting. Let's have a look how that law applies then. So it's 2d6 -7, but with a +6. So 10 -7, 3 + 6, 9. Let's slap a 9 in there. They sound quite strict, which is probably quite understandable, given that oops, you see, should have picked 9 plus. It doesn't like just 9 on its own. My validation has got the best of me. So any weapons, all drugs, any data from off-world, no free press. So this ties in with the fact that they have been had an imposed government, doesn't it? With a 9+ means that whoever's come in there has imposed a very strict level of law on to the people residing there. So the next bit's very interesting. Going to look at the cultural aspects here. So we have it's a D66. So I use the dark high for a D66. So starting with that blue. So you take, for a D66, you take that as a 40, and it's a 45. So let's have a look what that comes up with. And this is their primary cultural aspect, something about them that drives the planet's population. So, right, they're into fine clothing, decoration considered vitally important. So it's a primary cultural driver is to look good or look interesting in some way, focused on their clothing. So that's very interesting. So I'm now thinking, okay, are they on that watery planet on some kind of giant vessels, or is there, oil rig type bases? So that could tie in with there being some sort of natural resource that they draw up from below the seabed or something. I mean, but they can be on the land as well. It's not completely water. But either way, they can't stay outside. It's complete vac suit required. So interesting. So I have on here a secondary cultural feature. So let's see what I roll up for that. So 53, taking the 5 as the high from those two, and 53. And this is like, this isn't actually in the book to tell you to do a second one, but I just decided to put it in here because I wanted a slightly secondary aspect that was the driving force that everybody recognizes the Ozark system for is their fashion and fine decoration, etc. But actually behind the scenes, they also have an unusual custom media. News agents and telecoms channels are especially strange. Getting out of them may be difficult. So that neatly ties in with the fact that they've got an imposed government from outside, very high law level, no data, no free press. So they've got some very tightly controlled media that is feeding them the news in one way or another. So now you work out whether there's any opposing government force or underground revolutionary thinking going on. So that is a D3. So just roll a D6 for that. So that's a 3. So there's 3 opposing forces. So, but if the government is 0, 7, or if 10 plus, so, well, it was 9 plus, wasn't it? So no, so it is 3. So I've got to roll all 3 of these to see what these other factions are. I'll just do these quickly without skipping out to the dice. Why not? No, let's do the dice. Let's do the dice. So I'll do all 3 at once. So we've got a 5. Oh, a 2. And a 2. Yeah, fascinating. So let me take my 5. Fringe group. Oops, didn't like the 2. Oh, it's 1 to 3. And then the last one is 1 to 3 as well. So basically small groups, small interesting little groups of people that are just maybe bubbling up from the fact that they've had this new set of laws imposed on them from an invading force that's come in and put them under control. But I do need to find out what the government digit is for these, which is, it's just a 2d6. I'll roll for those. So I'll do all 3 at once again and go back. So the first government is an 11, 10 plus, the next one is 6, and the next one is 5. So yeah, 10. This means it's basically a charismatic dictator with a small, but it's only a fringe group. What was the second one? 7, I think. What was it? 6, 7. It's terrible. I'll take that anyway. It's such a small and obscure group anyway. And the last one was a 5. I know that for sure. Government digit type 5. Feudal. Technocracy. Interesting. Okay, so a few little burgeoning groups, a fringe group, but then a very obscure couple of groups. Maybe a little dictator thinks he's going to put himself into a position of power. It could just be a significant merchant. Perhaps he was there before the change in power to the main government. So that is moving on nicely. So tech levels then. So essentially tech level is built up on the starport size 6. Atmosphere gives it a +1 because there's no atmosphere, so you get a +1 automatically. And then population gives me a 1 here as well. So I've got an 8 to add to the 1d6 roll. So I could get quite a significant tech level here. So let's see how that pans out. Oops. That's quite nice. 5. I've had all the luck on tech levels on these 3 so far. So what did I say? I had an 8 plus 5, so I've got tech level 13. So this is good. So that's a significant tech level, and definitely has sort of starfaring in interstellar travel. Now, down to the trade goods. So I've put WA for Waterworld, but that's just accidentally left in there from the last one. So initially size 5+, yeah. Atmosphere 1, no. So sorry, I've gone straight down to garden because I saw the 5+ there. So agricultural, let's say, doesn't have it because the atmosphere is wrong. Asteroid, no, because we've got a bigger size. Barren, no, it doesn't have a 0, 0, 0 through all of those. Desert, atmosphere 2+, no. Fluid oceans, needs atmosphere of 10+, and hydro of 1+, so can't do that. Garden, definitely not, because we've got no atmosphere. High population needs a 9+, no, we've only got 5 here. High tech, so we've definitely high tech, that's great. With the 13 in the level there, we have got high tech, so just put that in there. And then back over to this ice capped. We have 0 to 1 in the atmosphere, and we have 1+ in the hydro, and that's all you need to get ice capped. So looks like we're ice capped. Industrial 0, yeah, we've got the right bracket for atmosphere. Hydro, population not big enough for industrial. Population not low enough for low pop. Tech isn't low. Non-agricultural, so yes on there, no on hydro, and no on population. So non-industrial 4-6. Okay, so that's interesting. We've got the 4-6 population, and that's all you need to get non-industrial trade type. So I shall put that in there. Poor, no, because we've got good hydro. Rich, no, because we've got no atmosphere. Well, atmosphere is a 1, so it's not a vacuum. And water world requires 10 in hydrography. So that's Ozark. And it's sounding very interesting because it's kind of Earth-like in terms of its amount of water, but it's got no atmosphere to breathe. So you really need vac suits on outside. But I can imagine there being, even though there's no industrial resource, I'm thinking, because you can create all this stuff yourself, I'm thinking there's some sort of resource on there that's laid down underneath the water. But they've got high tech, so they're doing something, mining, and then, or getting some kind of resources off the planet and then developing high technology from it, or they've got inbound trade that's allowing them to then create high tech because they're stored within these, they're obviously in some kind of environmental sealed life support buildings that don't, that have their own atmosphere inside, because, and atmospherically sealed is the word I was looking for. But it's now feeling like maybe this high tech is the reason. There's something here on the high tech side that maybe is the reason someone moved in and took over, from the fact that the law is very strong and it's a captive government. So ruling factions are performed by an imposed leadership answerable to an outside group. I'm not sure yet that I know where the outside group is, because Talon and Toxon don't really have, you know, Talon is a balkanized state and they're in a mess. They're just in internal infighting with their own system. Toxon is a stable desert planet, desert world with banking and trading on there, up in this area, this subsector to 0205, and then Ozark down here, which we're just doing, some kind of imposed force. I wonder if it could be imperial. It could be that some kind of high tech was starting to be evolved and developed here, and people moved in and imposed a government, keep them under the cosh, because it became, you know, there's a lot of money involved or something to do with that tech, or the discovery was interesting. And then we've got Toxon to the north, spiralward, whatever it happens to be. But we've got Toxon here, where there are big trading forces, very interested in investment and trade and banking. So maybe they are bankrolling something to do with here. maybe they helped bankroll the takeover bid on the place and thought, okay, we'll make a land grab, but we'll do it financially by bringing another faction into Ozark to do the legwork for them. Yeah, so high fashion world, closed in media, some kind of interesting aspects of the media, which is obviously controlled by this invading captive government that's conquered them. So I'm enjoying those aspects of this place, even though, unfortunately, I was hoping for a temperate, nice planet people could walk on, but there's a trace atmosphere, so everything's strictly backsuit for any external visits. But I like the idea of the fact that it has got enough water that there could be either something being mined from seabeds, something that forces some kind of external location. In terms of using the water somehow to bring that into the game. I like bringing in a bit of atmosphere in there if someone's landing. Also, because there's no atmosphere, I mean, this place could be just constantly ravaged by different storms, gas clouds, all sorts of interesting things that could come out of that. So from a name, because I've got to come up with a name for the watery earth, I'm going to call it Iliad. Iliad is a Iliad has, let's call it Red Seas. Yeah, Iliad has Red Seas covering, to make that a little bit more obvious, I'll call it red coloured seas. Covering surface, like the Earth. With only trace atmosphere. The population reside in large atmosphere, environmentally sealed. That's better than atmospherically sealed. Environmentally sealed. I'm going to call them mobile rigs that migrate across the dark red oceans in search of rare resources on and beneath the seabed. Just call it mineral resources as well. And I've spelled rare like so bad. Rare mineral resources on and beneath the seabed. So, the main I'm going to say the main output of Ozark are high-tech battery and energy weapon components and developed and built on So this is just me initially coming up with my thoughts about Ozark. More will happen because I don't want to I'm not one for like building a library level up about somewhere. I might come up with some key names of people that they might want to trade with here, and obviously people know that the location has been taken over. I'm not going to say, like I said, I'm not going to do the invading force until I've done a couple more systems, because then something might hook me into what or who, because I'm not sure that Toxon, I don't want to just end up being there as well. I'm rambling now. But what I don't want to end up doing is having every one of these individual systems only impacting the system beside it. So I kind of feel like I maybe want to do 2 or 3 more systems in the surrounding area. Although neighbours are going to be, obviously, when they can see someone nearby doing very well, and their position tactically to allow another warring nation to use them as a base as they fly through, or whatever it happens to be for refuel or something like that. It is likely that nearby systems are going to know or have some influence on events in a particular neighbour. However, I would like to just, like I say, explore a bit more around, because there could be a more powerful, more structured or even less structured system nearby that could be the reason that's taken over here. But I do think the Toxons have had some influence in it, because they can bankroll. They've got the money through, millennia of trade out of Toxon, building up a lot of cash and influence. And that's how they do it. They sit back and influence in that way. So, after I've just started, I'll say 2 years ago, the system was invaded by a military force and I'll say that I think they should have an orbital starport as well. I'm thinking this would be the first one that will have an orbital starport, because the other systems I said would be they had a sort of base. So any force that first captured I'll just say that ran a campaign over 2 months, but captured all significant government forces, all significant civil and business operations, a combination of both corporate, media and political takeover. That resulted in various changes in power, as some individuals agreed to new terms and others departed. Or I shall say attempted to depart. Who knows, maybe they were given an opportunity to say you can go off system, but something horrible happened. There's just a hulk of a ship where they said, here you go guys, and they just stuck it out into the somewhere on the planet, where it went into the sea, and it's now gone. So far I've got a reasonable idea building up that they were making something innocently, batteries, some kind of supply weaponry system that was suddenly they discovered something high-tech that worked really well for them, and then they were noticed for that, or some kind of deal was made by another faction that felt snubbed by the way they were trading so successfully, and decided they need to move in to give some proper control. Or they may have even moved in a way where they thought they were being helpful and providing them protection, and saying they could be in there saying, look, we're here because we're trying to control the supply of these military grade battery and energy weapon components, and we're here because we're protecting the overall status quo in the subsector, because it's important that your tech doesn't get into the wrong hands. That could be one of the aspects to it. So it could be that everybody's feeling a bit hard done by, but actually there's an important reason why they've come in. That's another idea I'm exploring. So that's one more system. I'm just going to cut it short and sweet today and just go, okay, I've built that. I'm feeling comfortable about the level of information I've done, because I'm running a campaign at the moment, and that's given me just the right amount of stuff to know what's going on. Obviously, I can do more in terms of maybe there's some flora and fauna on there, although very unlikely with only trace atmosphere. Maybe more things like lichen or some kind of weird deep sea plantoids, things that are slowly evolving down there, is why there's no atmosphere yet. But yeah, it looks good. So it's got a name. It's called Iliad. I'm a bit nervous that I may have used Iliad before as a system, but there's no harm in that, because someone could have come from a system called Iliad, came into the system called Ozark, and decided that they would call the planet they found there Iliad. And it has something distinct in that all the seas are kind of a dark red color as well, maybe some mineral, or even like a bloom of some kind of early microscopic life within the seas, creating that redness. So thanks for listening in, and please comment, because I'm getting some great feedback and ideas, which I'm going to then feed back in as I start to evolve the campaign too, because there's some good points made about Toxon background. And now I've ended up with two amber system, Ozark here and Talon side by side. So this whole region is becoming, it's destabilizing before my very eyes. So yeah, thanks again for listening, and watch out for the next episode. I'm going to do Newsax next, and then Bulks, and then sort of work around, because I know the players have got to jump one free trader ship. The first place they're going to go is Toxon, and then I'm going to need to start to fill in around there as they start to plan their next move. Okay, I think actually though, having said that, as a group, they've got a mortgage on a ship. They've got some shares, because one of the players ended up with quite a few shares from his career, and they've still got a massive mortgage repayment and maintenance they've not kept up on, because it's an older ship too. And I think initially they may end up bouncing backwards and forwards between Talon and Toxon, at least for the first month, with some kind of, obviously me dropping in plot and some action sequences into it, as well as the base trading of just trying to get their mortgage paid and a few people transported and freight, etc. But okay, thanks for listening, and goodbye. See you later.